So we're talking this month on walking the edge of life. And this week we're talking about, or this month we're talking about embracing the edge. And this week we're talking about walking the edge of life. Ah, it's so good to be here with you all today. So good. So this month we're exploring the idea of the edge, that place where growth happens, where something new is forming, where the familiar starts to loosen its grip, right? So, talking about walking the edge of life, especially that outer edge, the place where our inner truth starts to show up or be visible in lived ways, we can ask ourselves this simple question: what does it look like to live my truth when it feels risky or uncomfortable? What does it look like to live my truth when it feels risky or uncomfortable? See, now, most of us are pretty good at living our truth when it's safe, when it's affirmed, when it's familiar, when it doesn't cost much. But spiritual living, real spiritual living, often asks something more of us. As we often so say, spiritual living means showing up, even when it's hard. And I want to say this right at the beginning: walking the edge of life is not about being reckless or dramatic. It's not about leaping before we look. It's about courageous presence. It's about taking honest steps when it would be easier to stay quiet or small or hidden. This month I've been reading, the book of the month is with Howard Thurman's book. And he says, well, he speaks that world-shattering disclosure. He speaks of, let me start that over. Howard Thurman. He gives us beautiful framework for this in our talk today, and in the reading that I was doing this week. He was speaking that world-shattering disclosure is when life is one single string, one presence. A lot of people don't get that. Expressing itself in countless forms. And when we touch that truth inwardly, something shifts. That's the oneness that Ernest Holmes was talking about. Because once we've experienced that insight, life invites us to achieve it. In other words, what we touch in prayer, meditation, or reflection is not meant to remain private. It's meant to move. It's meant to live. It's meant to show up in real ways. That's the edge. Thurman says that human need is the swinging door into the innermost life of another, that place of tenderness and struggle or uncertainty where that's where spirit is most ready for connection. And when we act from our insight in those moments, our actions become a meeting place, a living sacrament. Now, Science of Mind teaches us the power of thought, and we know this really well. Consciousness shapes experience. What we believe matters. But Science of Mind never stops at ideas. This is for you, Celia. In the book of James, in the Bible, it says, "Be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves." Be doers of the word, not merely hearers who deceive themselves. I love that phrase, doers of the word, because it reminds us that the spiritual truth isn't something that we just agree with. It's something we practice. It reminds me of a friend of mine. This friend is thoughtful, spiritually grounded, really kind. The kind of person who reflects deeply before they act. For a long time, though, there was something they felt called to say at work about fairness, about how decisions were being made, but they kept holding back. They told themselves they were being patient, and they told themselves it wasn't the right moment. They told themselves they didn't want to create discomfort. And maybe some of that was true. Maybe. But one day, after a particularly quiet drive home, they realized the discomfort they were avoiding externally was now living internally. The cost of silence had started to outweigh the risk of speaking. So now they didn't make a speech. They didn't confront anyone dramatically. They simply asked a question, honestly, respectfully, calmly, at a meeting where it would have been easier to stay quiet. And nothing miraculous happened right away. No applause, no instant change. But afterwards, someone pulled them aside and said, "Thank you for saying that. I didn't know how to." See, that moment didn't fix anything, but it shifted something. Not just in the room, but in my friend. What my friend said later was, "I realized I didn't need to control the outcome. I just needed to live in alignment." That's walking the edge. Not knowing how it will land, not needing certainty, and yet choosing integrity anyway. That's what Ernest Holmes is pointing to when he invites us to think of the whole world as our friend. And to be a friend to the whole world. Somehow I'm singing in my head, he's got the whole world in his hands, right? What if we were a friend to the whole world? Now that kind of friendship takes courage. Because it's not easy to be loving, because it's easy to love people who agree with us. It's easy to affirm good when it's cooperative. See, Ernest Holmes asks us to refuse to see the negative side of anyone. And that refusal requires intention. This past week on the minister's listserv, I saw a great line, and it was talking about something that I've talked about in classes and from the pulpit is when you see someone who's really making you angry, imagine them as a newborn baby child. And this particular minister put names to this. This particular minister was talking about what's going on in our country right now with our political space right now. And this particular minister said, no matter who you agree with or disagree with, whether it be Trump or anyone else, imagine Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler as infant babies. I saw that look. Imagine them as infants in their mother's arms. The family greeting them and welcoming them into life. Imagine them being celebrated at their first birthday and their second birthday, and when they start to walk the first time and their parents going, "Yay!" Can you love that version of them? That's the version that we need to love. That's the version that we get to think about when we think of the whole world as our friend. No one's out to get us. The whole world is our friend. It's funny when I take my dog for a walk and we see a dog we don't know and say, oh, look, there's a new friend. And his tail wags and he's super happy, right? When we go out and we see people the other night, I ran into Danny and I ran into another friend of mine, and he was just, the dog was super excited, not Danny, the dog was super excited, right? Bouncing all over the place, super excited. Who's walking by? Who can I say hi to now? Everyone to him is a friend. Why don't we treat the world like that? Why don't we treat other people like that? There's a story from the Olympics. This is a story from 20 years ago, but it was mentioned the other day, yesterday. My brother was watching, had it on in the background. Does anybody here watch the Olympics? All the time. Yeah, this is like a sacred event in my family. Every time the Olympics came on, our family like stopped. That's what we did. And my brother's instilling that in his kids. And Mark is now super excited about the Olympics. We're watching curling and we're super excited, right? But my brother reminded me of this story 20 years ago, cross country race, relay race. The Canadian team is racing. They're on the stretch at the very end, and one of the Canadian team players, her pole broke. And the Norwegian coach was right there, and he handed her his pole. He handed her his pole, and she continued on. If you look for the video, she's got this huge smile on her face. She goes from to a huge smile on her face. Well, what happened was, because her pole broke, she slowed down, and his team was behind her, so they got slowed down. It slowed them down so much. When she got that new pole, she got a burst of energy, and she just bolted. And her team came in and medaled. And his team couldn't recover fast enough, and they didn't. But that is sportsmanship. That is teamwork. That is loving everyone. That's what I love about the Olympics, is everyone is cheering everyone else on. The best of the best have shown up. We don't boo them when they walk into the stadium. Sportsmanship is not about politics. We celebrate. So as you're walking around this next week, I want you to look at everyone as a new friend. Everyone is a new friend, including who's on TV, what you hear in the news. Everyone is a friend. That's walking the edge, not knowing what's going to happen. That thinking of the whole world as our friend, that's friendship that takes courage. Because it's easy to love people who agree with us. And it's easy to affirm good when life feels cooperative. Walking the edge of life means choosing love even when fear would be simpler. And that brings us to the first place most of us meet the edge, and that is discomfort. Discomfort, it isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something is asking to grow. Discomfort is a sign that something is asking to grow. Living your truth might mean speaking when silence feels safer. It might mean setting a boundary. It might be offering kindness where cynicism would be easier. The question isn't how do I avoid discomfort? The question is, what am I loyal to when comfort arises? Now, second, science of mind calls us into embodiment. Ernest Holmes reminds us that when we resist change, even when it's good for us, Ernest Holmes reminds us that we resist change even when it's good for us. Sorry. Often the edge isn't about learning something new. It's about accepting a fuller expression of what's already in us. Holmes says, we are not going to know, we already do know. Walking the edge of life means trusting that inner knowing enough to act without needing guarantees. And finally, there's the edge between private belief and public action. Thurman calls this a simple sacrament. Not dramatic, not flashy, simple. A conversation, a choice, a moment of being present. Breaking our patterns takes practice. This isn't one brave moment. It's a way of walking through our life. And that's the good news, because we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be willing. So, as we close today, I want you to remember this. The edge is not where faith ends. It's where faith becomes visible. So this week, take one small, brave step beyond your comfort zone. Just one. What's one thing that you can do that just slightly moves you out of your comfort zone? And each day, take a moment and ask yourself, where am I being invited to show up fully? Where am I being invited to show up fully? So we need to trust that our truth is not fragile. Trust that it was given to be lived. That's walking on the edge. So let's go into prayer, shall we? Knowing that there is only one power, one presence, one energy, one thing that is, whatever word you use for it, it is the all that is, the all that is, the love, the joy, the power, the peace, the presence. It is that knowingness. It is abundance, celebration, beauty. And we are a part of that. We are a part of that because we are expressions of it showing up to experience itself as only it can do through each and every one of us. And that energy, that power, God's spirit, it is absolute, complete, pure love. Which means that we are, at our core, absolute, pure love. It is courage, meaning we are courage. And so I am affirming today for each person that is hearing this, that is in the room, that may listen to or watch this later, that every healing that is you are seeking is seeking you now. Every shift that you are seeking is seeking you now. Every new friendship that you are seeking is seeking you now. The abundance of life, whatever form it may take, that you are seeking is seeking you now. I know that anyone that is seeking healing is experiencing it, because as it is seeking us, we open ourselves to it. We say yes to the gifts that are showing up. We say yes to healing. We say yes to friendships. We say yes to community. We say yes to the edge that is inviting us to experience ourselves at a deeper level. I know that we are all divinely blessed. I know that everything that we are searching is already available to us, and that all we need to do is open our hearts and open our eyes so we can see the gifts that are coming to us. Mm. And I am so grateful for this teaching. I'm grateful for this knowledge. I'm grateful for the people that have shown up today because they know. They know. You all know that something wonderful is happening. That today is the best day ever. And so I release this prayer into the law of mind, knowing that it is already done. And I simply anchor this prayer, and you may join me in saying, and so it is.